Hello, and welcome to our face-to-face class for week 7. In summary, we will examine the writing of students on a developmental scale, mostly from pre-K to later on grades, intermediate level grade levels. Also, we will take a look at rubrics to assess the students' strengths and needs of writing and as writers. Our guidepost for this evening will be to, of course, review our outcomes. Our content will be comprised of our writing and development. There are so many theories and approaches to writing, and I will touch on some aspects in terms of a constructivist approach as well as a direct approach. I'd like us to connect and collaborate and analyze authentic student writing samples. I thought it would be best to actually use some of real life students who are in my classroom. So we'll have an opportunity to use developmental stages and checklists as instruments to analyze each artifact. And then next week, I will not be holding an in-person class. I'd like to have you submit your assignments, and hopefully you are all set in those areas. Our norms and expectations for our classes: being respectful, of course, being present in body language and practicing active listening, using respectful and supportive language and actions, and being patient and positive with each other. I'd like you to just take a look at this quote, and I'd like you to write a 2-minute response about this quote. If you are tuning in virtually, if you would like to email this to me, I would greatly appreciate that. And also it would provide insight of your thoughts. In summary, reading and writing are both congruent processes and integrated processes. One belongs to the other. And in my perspective, if they are harmonized within a classroom community, academic achievement rises. Our word wall for this evening and vocabulary will be analytic scoring, artifacts, author's chair, best practices, collaborative writing, and conventional spelling. Our guided reading framework as a continuum of how we progress as readers. So, writing process and strategies. In terms of writing instruction, we want to possess and be equipped as teachers to understand that students learn how to spell in conventional ways by engaging in meaningful reading and writing activities. Teachers also understand the stage of writing is set by what the teacher does, not by what the teacher says. So it brings us back to Chomsky's optimal learning theory of I do, we do, you do model. Therefore, teachers learn about writing along with their students. They demonstrate and model the various functions of writing and freely share their writing experiences. So I have had opportunities to share with my youngsters about what I have completed in terms of my dissertation and what I needed to accomplish through those experiences. And I have written a children's book. So I would have been able to provide real life scenarios of a reader and then to truly cultivate our classroom as a writing community. It just heightens the establishment that we're all writers and we're all readers and thinkers. So we will delve into what's called a writer's workshop. It is coined by its founder, Lucy Calkins. She has written much literature around writing. Also, she publishes a lot of literature on the Reader's Workshop and balanced literacy. She will use the term small moment, and in a way, it's expanding a smaller moment and zooming in on one moment and expanding that and making it bigger. So here is a sample of a checklist that I thought would be helpful in terms of bringing it to your understanding. So reading can be complex, but if you break it down and you have certain focus areas, often referred to as focus correction areas, it will become less burdensome and overwhelming to both your reader and the one who's reviewing. So this is a checklist. So it's student driven and also teacher driven. So I thought this was a great example. So it's clearly depicting what you're looking for. A rating sample could be framed in this capacity in terms of assessing. So if you took a look at this writing sample, you could read it, analyze it, and then establish targeted instructional objectives of what this particular student needs work on. Oftentimes, I've had writing conferences where it's very much promoted in a positive way, really praising the work of your writer and amplifying their strengths. There may be a correction area like, oh, next time let's work on this when we meet, but it's a cyclical and ongoing process with the ultimate vision of helping them become more confident in using their language as a reader and a writer. So I thought this was a great example, and I did extract this from your text as a way to think about what this writer would need. So take a moment and read it over. And then if we go back to our writing checklist, we could even make a personalized writing checklist for this particular student in terms of what he or she may need to work on. So that was one example of a writing artifact, but there are so many types and modes of writing. We can refer to writing as non-structured, and we could also use these as a way of assessment as well. When there's less stress or less high demand, students write freely and use writing functions to communicate what interests and concerns them. So by participating in non-structured writing, students gain knowledge about written language without direct instruction. So to me, it really drives the purpose of writing is very much a form of communication. It's a reciprocity. It's a give and take. It also helps foster a supportive, risk-free environment that in turn encourages students to write. So in terms of the rules of the room, like maybe little Betsy list her rules of the room. This very much reminded me of how my kids, we celebrate Christmas, how they make their Christmas list. I do save them every year, and I could say that that's an artifact especially of my youngest. She is still perhaps at a phonetic stage of writing and spelling. And it's always interesting and warms my heart on how she phonetically spells. There's unstructured writing, and then in turn, we have our structured writing. So, this in terms is targeted, it's often shown at the beginning of the school year and across all of the different terms of expectations throughout the school year. It's a continuum, and there are the vision is to achieve and perform at a certain level. So, collaborative writing is considered a means of structured writing, teacher guided writing, and creative writing. So, for these more focused writing endeavors, teachers first observe students to determine and record their writing strengths and their writing instructional needs. So, this in terms fosters that conferencing and that two-way teacher student reciprocity, even student to student, and helping them become confident and providing more agency around their writing. Also, highlighting their strengths, just like anything in life in terms of motivation, they'll be more open to taking risk as writers. So, Writers Workshop, hopefully the audio. Okay, so this was a glimpse of a day in the life of Writer's Workshop, and you saw samples of students building their stamina, sharing their writing in an author's chair format. I used my late grandmother's rocking chair as a special place for my students and as novelty to share their writing. Highly motivating and highly engaging for all students. Gives them a sense of what is the end product. So that was a glimpse into the writer's workshop, which very much can be in alignment with the writing process. So we may all know and have experienced the steps of the writing process, and it still rings true in current educational pedagogy today. So if you are adhering to a true writer's process, you would begin with your brainstorming, your drafting, your revising, your editing, and publishing. And I often emphasize that it may take just a while to get to the publishing stage, but I often highlight that not all pieces may or may not reach the publishing stage, and that is okay. I often will have my kids share an author's chair of their drafting so they can get feedback from their peers and positive reviews and maybe suggestions for their next steps. I often emphasize this how strong writers use their voice, their organization, their ideas, conventions, descriptive words, their sentence fluency. So, all of these are under the umbrella of characteristics of a strong writer. I'm not teaching these all at once, but these are interwoven throughout the school year. And in terms of instructional points, we will use these all throughout the year as mini lessons. And you heard in the video that mentor texts are often used, and this is where you can pull in certain pieces of literature that uh, do a fine job in a way modeling what craft you are trying to emulate. So there is another strategy or methodology named collaborative writing. And this is when one person begins a sentence, and after that, a person writes his or her sentence. The paper will be passed to the next person in the group. The next person writes their sentence, and then we continue until there is a beginning, middle, and end or follows a provided story structure. So you may be focusing on plot structure. So you would have a beginning, middle, and end, or conflict and resolution, or you may focus on how to build a summary and so forth. For younger writers who are perhaps at the pre-communicative stage or pre-graphic stage, you could often use pictures or an organizer of a cartoon image. So there are many variations. What I like us to do is try it as a class. So we will break up into our groups. I will give you all a number, and then we will begin with it all started when. And for my approach, I like to appoint one color for each writer in the group. So it's a quick assessment to see how each student is constructing and organizing their thoughts and writing incomplete sentences. And if a student can express themselves in a linear fashion, also their vocabulary can be assessed as well. Another method is through dialogue journals. And this can be seen in, again, various approaches. So, in essence, a dialogue journal, also known as an interactive journal, provides a way for teachers and individual students to carry on a conversation over time, sharing ideas, feelings, and concerns in writing. I often now see this housed in perhaps maybe a Google Classroom document as an ongoing and interactive journal. Or a student can write simply in a notebook. Now, earlier emergent writers may draw pictures to convey their message, and then the teachers have mainly a conversation. They respond naturally, and meanwhile, the teacher is modeling the mechanics of writing, sentence structure, accurate letter formation, perhaps even integrating some higher level vocabulary, which sparks curiosity of, oh, my teacher used this word. I wonder what that means. And maybe that extends what they want. They're curious about the word, and next thing you know, they're looking it up and using it in their writing. So again, it's a natural interchange. So there is a checklist that I thought was worth highlighting in your text. It's an analytical scoring system, and this breaks it down to more of the areas in which rubrics are developed. So you have your ideas, your organization, your style, your mechanics. Oftentimes, focus is included in standards-based rubrics or district-wide common assessments. So, as we are delving into our different writing approaches and methodologies, I'd like us to take some time to connect and collaborate. Here are the different developmental levels of a writer. And as you can see, this word is united, and this assimilates to different developmental levels. So, figure 7 would be considered the pre-communicative spelling. In other words, the babbling stage. The semi-phonetic could be represented in figure 8, the semi-phonetic spellers. Figure 9, more of the phonetic speller. Figure 10, we would consider that as the transitional speller. And figure 11 would represent more of a conventional speller. And I would say very much between transitional and conventional. So another way to gain a snapshot assessment of where your youngsters are in their development as writers. So spelling is often a buzzword, of course, and a debatable subject area. But we want to make sure that as educators, we realize that spelling is a visual process. Although we say sound it out, that's a great strategy for decoding our language. To become better spellers, we often should use personal word walls, using word walls in the classroom. That will allow students to become more strategic in their spelling, like where to go, where to find answers to the seeing piece. So put a check next to techniques that leverage seeing. Okay, so would memorizing sight words be a way? Reading more books, learning common prefixes and suffixes, keeping track of those tricky words, using mnemonics, like when one vowel does the walking, the other one does talking. Be aware of spelling exceptions, and then even testing yourself and reviewing. So I think all of these are helpful practices. But memorizing sight words, yes, can perhaps help short-term memory, but we need another place to hold those for our youngsters and perhaps have those personal word wall tools accessible for kids in our class. The infamous word wall, although is again a debatable subject, we know that English language learners profit from having word walls with visual representations and perhaps with their native language accompanying the word for vocabulary. And we want you to know that it's a collection of words which are displayed in large visible letters on a wall. So mainly alphabetical order. The word wall is designed to be an interactive tool for students and contains an array of words that can be used during writing and reading. So another reference point. Assessing spelling development, I'd like you to refer to page 448 in your course text, and then on page 451 in the course text.
Graduating with
Okay, I'm going to pause right there, and I will also embed this in our Canvas. So I look forward to having you connect and collaborate and continue with your lesson plan development about your running record. And we're going to head back to our vocabulary. So I wanted to point out that our artifacts are a collection that can be kept in a writing portfolio for a child. Okay. So our Freyer model, and head into our vocabulary again. And these all are very much entangled into our reading rope. And I know I have been repetitive, but this brings us back to our theoretical underpinnings of what we're discussing. All right. So I wanted to close on that tonight. And of course, reach out with any questions or concerns. And thank you so much.